Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session on releasing the power of motivation. Today, we are joined by Leanne. Hi, Leanne. How are you this morning?
Hi, Becca. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Before we move on, do you want to just give a brief overview of who the One Group are and what we can do?
Yeah, certainly. So, for those of you who don't know who we are, the One Group is a recruitment agency. We have offices in Hertfordshire, Northamptonshire, and Cambridgeshire, and Cambridge and Peterborough. And we help companies and individuals with their careers and building their teams within so many different areas and functions within a company, including accounting and finance, HR, marketing, IT, technical engineering, office environment, and even scientific as well. So if you did have a job that you're really struggling to fill, or if you're looking for the next step on the career ladder, please do get in touch with us.
Thank you very much. And of course, we have our expert guest today, which is one of our favourite expert guests. She's back again. It's Julie. Julie, how are you today?
I'm really well, thank you. And thank you for the introduction. So lovely.
You're welcome. Well, we love having you on here, so we're pleased to have you back again. Just a quick shout out to everyone who is watching today's session. Remember, this is an interactive session, so join in on the conversation, pop any questions or bits of examples you'd like to share, pop it all in the comments and we will interact with those as best as we can. But to get started, Julie, do you want to just give a quick overview of who you are, and then Leanne, we can dive into today's discussion.
Of course. Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie from Apuri Solutions. Apuri Solutions is designed to empower businesses through people solutions. So I'm a HR practitioner, a coach, a trainer, but also I do something called people analytics. And that's where my love of motivation comes from.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for being here with us today, Julie. We love having you with us. So can you share a bit about your personal journey with motivation and how it's influenced your career within HR and coaching?
Yeah, of course. And I think it's important to start off with the fact that motivation is always around us. It's pressing us to do the next thing. But I don't think I really understood the power of motivation until a few years ago. I've always been driven in whatever I decide to do. I think that's the most important thing, whether I believed that or not. And ended up leading a HR team and being responsible for the UK HR team for an international company. That was absolutely fantastic. Got me to travel around the world. Amazing time. But actually, I found myself being in meetings from early hours to late hours meetings and never really seeing any output. I decided back in 22 to leave that world and start up Apuri Solutions. Many reasons for that. And one was really about being able to sense what I did and the impact that I was having, that I'd lost because I wasn't at the coalface for the company, the corporate company I worked for. When I started the business, I met a very interesting chap called Paul Ward, and we had a long conversation about motivation and actually how motivation can really impact what you do, why you do it, and understanding that can really empower you. I was intrigued by this, and I remember Paul would talk about it being part of people analytics. So we're thinking about DISC profiling, Myers-Briggs, all of that style, and being a skeptical HR person and adding in that I've been in the field of HR for over 25 years now, so very skeptical. Thinking, I don't get how motivation can be measured in this way. So agreed to take part in an analysis. And actually what came out of that has really shaped Apuri Solutions and the services that we offer and how I function on a day-to-day basis. So understanding your motivation, what makes you tick and why, and where you are against those motivators is so important. When I came out of the corporate world, I knew I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know what that would look like, what that would feel like, and what I needed to do to drive myself every day.
Mm-hmm.
What I was able to do was gain from actually the analysis that I like having the meaning in life. I like being an expert, so I like being in the know,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe I don't like the compensation side as much as I should. So I'm able to work out strategies to drive that forward and really make that difference. Now, when I left the corporate world, my motivation was around 48%. So I
Okay.
wasn't that motivated. Didn't really know what I was doing. Wasn't sure which way was up. Had made this huge leap of faith in myself. A few months later, however, I looked at my motivational analysis and that had increased to 88%. So that I drive, and now I'm able to drive my motivation every single day through the things that I do, the reasons I do it. So I'm really purposeful about what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, talking to people about their motivation is another way of driving my own motivation and empowering individuals. So long story short.
Actually, I have a question on that. Would
Sure.
you say that in a company environment, the motivation of employees is the responsibility of the employees themselves, or is it the responsibility of the HR department?
So I think that's it's a really interesting question. I feel that the people who've tuned in are probably thinking it's not my job. Please say it's not my job. But actually, I think it's everyone's. As an individual, we should understand what drives our motivation. Because it's our motivation, we own that. So we've got to be in charge. For leaders, they've got to enable those conversations to happen. They've got to enable that motivation to be driven.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got to give that space to be able to do that. And actually, by doing that, see the benefits themselves. But also they need to drive, as an individual, their own motivation.
Mm-hmm.
The role I see of HR practitioners is to really support those conversations, that motivational drive, as a solid foundation. So making sure people have that space, the awareness, the knowledge to be able to drive that further forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, a bit of everyone really for me.
So how can it be made visible within? How can motivation be made visible within the office environment?
That's always a challenge in itself. The first step, I suppose, is individuals being aware themselves of their motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's something, I alluded to it before, there's something called motivational analysis, and that's something that I believe strongly in, that is is part of the people analytics tool. So it looks at what motivates you and where you are against that. The reason I feel that that's important is because actually it breaks down, alongside Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the purpose for individuals, what makes us tick. Now, as we know with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've all got that stability, that security, that shelter at the bottom. But when we start to get to the top of the pyramid, we'll be at different stages. And that's the same for motivation. It could be that we're driven by finding the meaning. It could be that actually we're most motivated when we're being creative, or we are part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to then implement that into work, that's really where we get to drive it forward. And that's where the fun begins.
Yeah. So, how will people know where they are on this hierarchy of needs, and will their motivation adapt and change within time? Do they have to think about this continually?
So I think with the motivational, with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I would suggest that individuals have a look at the. I'm doing this because it's a triangle. Have a look at the resources that you've got available online to check in with where you think you may be. It goes up all the way up to self-actualization, but it starts off with the food, the shelter, the belonging, being part of a team, having the self-worth, having the finance, being able to support all of that. When we think about motivation and Maslow's, yeah, that completely changes over time. If we think for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we lose our job, we lose our shelter, that impacts our motivation, it impacts absolutely everything about us. And that becomes our first priority. Or motivation, it shifts over time. If we think about all of the, or if I think about my motivation when I was 16 to now, and I'm not revealing my age, but it was some time ago, that my motivation, the reason I do stuff, is completely and utterly changed. So it will adapt depending on our experience, our circumstance, all of those different filters that we take in. It will shift. It will also shift with our beliefs. The other quick point that you were mentioning about whether it shifts, it could also shift on the day. It doesn't have to be over a long period of time. It could be daily, hourly, our motivation shifts, and that's why it's so important to keep checking on it.
What are the most common challenges with motivation within a company environment, and do you have any suggestions for companies to sort of try and overcome this?
So I think the challenges that can be experienced are the people being in the wrong jobs, or not being able to stretch their legs as much as they wish, or do the tasks that they want to do. Now, whilst that sounds incredibly easy, sometimes it's just not practical in a business. But if we take the example of actually someone's not able to make the decisions, but that's their motivator, is to feel in control of something, that can actually demotivate them. So we constantly need to be aware about how we can drive that motivation forwards, even if it's just creating small tasks. Now, as individuals, our motivation can be impacted, of course, outside of work. It doesn't have to just be in work. So if you're creative, maybe it's doing creative things at home, or thinking about a different reframing a task. So if I'm thinking, right, I need to do a new process, but I'm not process driven and I'm not admin driven, and that's just not exciting. If I'm thinking, well, actually, I could be creative in doing this. This could really change. This is the bigger picture. You can drive the motivation that way, rather than it just being, well, I just don't want to do this. Thinking about what it means to you.
So from a company perspective as well, then, with the reframing in mind, if they had targets that they wanted to achieve for that year, and potentially their staff were lacking in motivation, do you have any suggestions on how they can try and motivate their staff so the company does actually meet the targets?
Completely. And I've got a great example of this as well that I'll share. So it's all about reframe.
Okay.
It's all about changing. You don't necessarily have to change the meaning of something, but maybe the terminology of how you talk about things. I worked with a company some time ago, and they were struggling to hit their strategy. And these are senior leaders, but their hearts weren't in the strategy. The strategy was financial. It was X amount of growth. But all of those individuals in the room searched for the meaning. What would it mean if they were able to hit that? So what we were able to do was actually reword the strategy without changing the outcome. So it was more about the meaning.
Oh, I like that idea.
What would they feel? What would they think? What would they see if they hit that? What would it mean? How would it change people's lives? How would it benefit the customer? So you've got all of the niceties of the meaning of it, but you still got we still need to grow by this % to get this meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So on a larger scale, when we're thinking about employees within a business, it could be about marketing the vision in different ways. So you're hitting all those different pockets of people's motivation by, well, this is the meaning if we do this, but actually for those people who are driven by the business growth, it's simply we want to grow. But actually for the creatives, this is what we get to create, or this is the innovation we get to have if we get to this %. So again, you're putting that feeling towards it that drives people's motivation.
And how can individuals measure their motivation? What are the practical tools or the things that they can do to try and do that?
The practical things are journaling, reflection, understanding and creating your self-awareness. Now, I fully appreciate that we've got an awful lot going on in everyone's lives. So to say, right, we need to spend X amount of time every day sitting down, journaling, reflecting, whilst you're getting your food shopping, you're sorting out the children, you're sorting out your partner, or doing housework, or doing whatever it is you've got to do on top of everything else. That can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
So some of the tools that I use with my customers is actually, right, when you feel your motivation dip, just write down what's going on at that point. Because what you're doing there is creating that self-awareness that, one, you're kicking in, so you're noticing when your motivation dips, but also by noting down, is it because you're hungry? Is it because you're tired? Is it because you haven't had a break?
Did you say hungry or angry?
Hungry, hangry, any of the above. They're all really going to impact motivation, but it could be you just don't want to do the job. So why?
You know what? I feel like my motivation dips when I have a lot to do. And that's probably when my motivation needs to be higher. But when there's so much to do, I think that's when I definitely dip. What do you think, Becca?
Yeah, I was just going to say I actually started doing journaling at the beginning of this year, and it's made a massive difference. I only do it, like you say, it's a lot to do every day. I'm slowly working my way up, but I do it 2 times a week. And it does make a difference, especially like you say, when you have those dips of, oh, I'm not really feeling that motivated. And actually what I do is I look back and be like, why am I feeling like that? What's happened over the past week? Maybe that's made me lose that like motivation, or why am I feeling this way? And it does make a difference to actually just make you realize, right, this is why. So what now can I do to get that back?
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because we're so much onto the next.
Yeah.
And onto the next and next, that you then kind of lose track of that check-in. So why did I feel like that? How can I feel differently about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can people do then, Julie, to kind of help them to, if they get to, I get to my desk, there's so much to do and I feel overwhelmed and then demotivated. Like, what is the strategy for me to try and get out of that headspace?
I was going to say, I feel a sense of urgency there. So there's several things that you can do. One being, of course, to lower the amount of tasks that you've got to do, prioritizing. Again, these are always great fun when you're smack in the middle of it and everything's a priority.
Yeah.
How am I going to prioritize? You could look at low-hanging fruit. You could do all the traditional methods, but there's something within NLP that you can do, which is called reframing. And I've said the word a couple of times during our time together. It doesn't have to be with words to reframe your state. So it's changing your state. State is how we feel in a simplified term. It's, do we feel we want to do something? Do we feel actually, no, not at all? Now, one of the things that can change our state, and one of the most powerful things, is music. So for me, when I think about, I want to get energized, and I am ashamed to admit this, on the one group, LinkedIn Live, but for me, 90s dance music is where it's at.
Love that. Yeah, love some 90s.
It's the beat, the memories, the whole thing about it gives me energy.
Mm.
So if I'm looking for that booster, I'll put some dance music on. If I'm looking to change my state to more reflective, I'll put classical music on, because it just, the flow of it helps me manage my state. Now, I'm sure as I've said that, a lot of people go, actually, I think I do that as well. It's something that the majority of us do, but we don't actually realise we're doing it.
Yeah, I think I do that when I'm working from home and I can control what music can play. That definitely helps me. I'll put some Ibiza tunes on, or some dance music on, or some 90s music on. So would you say then that music is one of your strategies for sustaining motivation then? Have you got any other little tips for how to keep motivated?
Definitely. I think it's just the music is really, really important to quickly change that state and to drive that motivation. But of course, that's great if you're working in an office by yourself or you've got headphones. Not so if you're an open plan, because then you've just got lots of different music going on. So it's, for me, it's understanding what motivates, why it motivates you, and actually taking that time to consciously say, I've got to do this task, or I've got all of this to do. Where's my driver for this? Is it, I get to do a really good job. I get to, I don't know, place candidates, give people a new opportunity of their career. Is it that I get them to smash through their targets, or I solve a problem? What is it for me that drives my motivation to get this done? Importantly, is it a reward? Do you get a reward at the end of it? I mean, I think I've probably said this before. I do it with my housework. My reward after it is a cup of coffee and a sit down.
Coffee.
Cup of coffee.
That's not a reward.
That is, I can't have a cup of coffee until I've done my housework.
And it's that feel good, enjoying the coffee in your clean home and taking
exactly.
It should at least be a hot chocolate with marshmallows and cream.
No, I'm simple black coffee. That's it. That's the drink. But it's those kind of things.
Julie, what if you wake up in the morning and you're in an absolutely amazing mood, but then you stub your toe and you look out the window and it's raining and the drive to work is horrendous, and then you get to work and you're in a really bad mood and you're just now not motivated to do anything and you're just, in that zone? What should people do then?
So,
not speaking from experience.
Was that what happened this morning, Leanne?
Do you want to share? Again, it's about that change of state. So how can you change your environment, your mindset? Is it that you take yourself off, you listen to some music? Is it that you sit and actually think, right, what is the purpose? What is the plan of today? How am I going to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
I think hopefully we don't stub our toes every day, but we certainly face challenges in the world most days. And it's actually, how do you build that resilience to say, okay, well, this has happened, but what does that mean? How has that impacted? Is it a big impact? How does that sit with my motivation? Is it a low impact? And actually, is there something I can learn from it? Is there something I can do to stop it from happening? And am I okay with it happening? So again, a lot of this is really just checking in with yourself.
Yeah. Julie, can you share any motivational initiatives that have been successful within organisations that you've worked with?
Yeah, certainly. And I think, again, as we've spoken about today, a lot of the motivation is down to individuals. However, it can also be to teams and to organisations. So one of the things that I do is I work with not only individuals, but teams and organisations to understand the motivation, to look at how that impacts the bigger picture, as well as if there's any internal conflicts or team conflicts that might occur purely down to motivation. So there's lots of those things. In terms of the initiatives, it's really going to be dependent on the team or the individual and what they want. I was working with one individual who was really struggling with their motivation, and their main motivator was how they could be creative. So we talked lots about what does being creative actually mean, and how can you do that in your day-to-day work? How can you build that into your week, your day? What does that look like to you? Is it doing arty projects? Is it being crafty? Is it actually making a difference to something in work and just reframing how you see that? For others, it's been about having those conversations as a team. Right, if we want to stop, start, continue, what is it that we're going to stop? Knowing what we know now about everyone's motivation, what can we start doing?
Yeah.
And it works really, really well. So it's taking the individual as one, looking at it in a wider picture, and then thinking about the strategies and what you can implement to really make a difference.
And from your experience, what are the benefits that companies can expect when they do actively promote motivation awareness and understanding of motivation?
Oh, I think it's endless. Absolutely endless. So for me, when we look at the benefit to companies, it's your attrition levels, your sickness levels, the well-being of staff. And I think these also impact, and of course, there were individuals, their engagement with the business. And then that, of course, leads on to the productivity, the bottom line of the business. If you have got motivated staff, they're going to achieve a lot more. Now, there is small print when it comes to this. That being, if you've got highly motivated staff, but they're not skilled, their performance is going to be lacking. They haven't got the right skills to do the job. If you've got individuals who are highly skilled, but they've got no motivation, they're going to be lacking, and they're probably not going to be up to any good. doing within the job. What you want to have, of course, is highly skilled and highly motivated individuals, because their performance is going to go through the roof. And that means then, of course, that the company performance is going to go through the roof. So that's where we want to get to. And it's really it's really important we understand that we've both got the skill and the motivation piece to take the business forward. Now, as an individual, think how much more empowering it would be to have, you've got the skill, but you've got no motivation, but to go in every day with that buzz of, actually, I can achieve whatever I want to achieve. How much more fun that's going to be, how much more energy you're going to bring. And imagine all of the team being the same. It's absolutely massive.
Yeah. That would be great, just to walk into the office and everyone's just highly motivated to do everything great. That would just be amazing, wouldn't it? That would rub off on you even if you were having a bad day or a bad morning.
Oh, completely. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's getting people to that point. Of course, if they're so overmotivated, there's always going to be a risk of potential burnout, or their motivation is going to drop incredibly quickly. So there is always that thing to be mindful of. But when we're talking about motivation being high, we're probably talking about it ranging from anything from 75 to 100% in terms of how much people are motivated.
So in your experience with motivation analysis and NLP, what are some of the common insights and patterns that you find with motivated individuals?
So I think one of the most fascinating areas that really come to light when looking at motivation analysis, and I went into HR because I'm nosy and I have an interest in people. So probably most HR practitioners would go, yeah, fair play. And I think that's really driven my interest in looking at these stats. But the majority of people that I've worked with are motivated by understanding the reason, the meaning for what they're doing. That's what they're after. So transcribing that into the work that they do, why they do it, what's the output of it, drives their motivation. That, it makes sense. What really shocks me, and still shocks me, is the amount of analysis that I do, where if people get the sense of public recognition, that's the lowest motivator of them all for the majority of people.
Really?
Yeah, it's really surprising.
Is that because people can see other people getting this public recognition that they're not getting, so that it actually acts as a demotivator rather than a motivator?
So sometimes that's the case. Other times it's, so we've got 9 core motivators that we have. And when we look at them the highest to the lowest. So if we've got the lowest being the public recognition, if that's below a certain level, that can actually stop you from doing something.
Okay.
So if we think that, if you were to say to me, Leanne, right, we've got this project to do, and at the end of this, there's a chance that you're going to have to go up on stage, there's going to be an award, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. But for me, and for many other people that I've worked with, that maybe get me to the point where I'm like, actually, I don't want to do that piece of work.
Yeah.
I think there's anything worse of going up on stage. So my motivation will then be going, oh, let's put that piece of work to the bottom of the pile. Let's do something where we can find the meaning in what we're doing and take that forward. And I don't know whether it's a UK cultural thing. I wonder whether, if I was running my business in the US, where actually the because of the culture, the results would be so vastly different. I think that's a theory I need to work on. More than happy to. But for me, then it's thinking about, right, well, how can we look at that in a different way?
Yeah.
How can we take that project and line it up with what motivates me to get it over the line, rather than just go, I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to hide it.
Yeah. Last question for me, Julie, is what role do you think leaders play within their teams, and what are some practical tips that leaders could do to try and sustain a motivated team?
Again, really good question. So I think if we split it between the leaders, HR, and individuals, I think that would probably be really, really good. For leaders, of course, leaders are individuals. If we think about leadership, it's the majority of the time it's about being a servant leader, empowering your team to be able to do the job. You're making it possible for them. That's your purpose. If you want to adopt and drive motivation within your team or your area, you need to empower that conversation to take place. You need to empower that to happen. So whether it is you as an individual saying, actually, do you know what, this motivates me, and this is, I'm going to be transparent, this is how I work. How do you work? Have you ever thought about it? Having those conversations in a safe space, I think that would be one way of doing it. I think as well, being true to your word and making sure that you're consistent with that approach is really, really important. If we think about managerial techniques in the 90s, for those of us that were working in the 90s, it was, you would come in, you would do your job, you would go home. You didn't have a conversation. You were just told, or certainly I was told, what to do, when to do it by, and it wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a debate. It was just done. Leadership's transformed so much since then. But sometimes as leaders, when we're under pressure, we can revert back, and that can really damage those conversations because we're damaging that relationship with people because we're not being consistent. So I think that's really important. I think then we would think about the individuals. If we've got a leader that's saying, actually, we want to have these conversations, be part of it.
Yeah.
Join in. Take that risk of being able to say, actually, these are the things that motivate me and these aren't. Because then that allows for growth. If you don't participate, nothing will change.
Lead by example.
Exactly. For HR teams and professionals, it's really about empowering that conversation and checking in, maybe helping and supporting the leaders to have that discussion. So they're kind of underpinning, as with the majority of HR professionals and the tasks that they get to do, they're underpinning the organisation to enable that to take place.
Yeah.
So realistically, it involves everyone. Again, long story short.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. That's all my questions, Becca.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Once again, Julie, it's just been a really informative session. I feel like, Leanne, about you, but I've actually taken quite a few bits away from that, and hopefully everyone else too. Yeah, amazing.
That's what I like to think about.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to be so motivated now. No, it's been amazing. Once again, thank you, Julie. We haven't had any questions come through today, but of course, anyone that is watching, if you do want to talk to Julie about anything further, you can contact her on LinkedIn, or we've also got her email address, which you can find now at the bottom. But yeah, it's been an amazing session. Julie, thank you once again for being part of another LinkedIn Live with us, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks. Bye.